Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Woodstove Chat. I've got my coffee, got a nice fire going, and today I'm going to be grinding a chef's knife. I'm going to be doing what some call a no plunge line grind, where you can't see the plunge lines, and just a different type of grind. It's not a right or wrong. I won't be doing an S grind or anything like that. I've got a radius platen, but that's not what I'm doing here. But I will be doing some things that you may like, and which really helps me. A couple techniques that I use when grinding. And although it's a flat grind, it's going to have a twist to it. Not a literal twist. But anyway, so while I'm grinding this knife, I'll be grinding and sanding it. I thought I'd go over a few things that I saw, and I do this from time to time. If you're new to the channel, started doing this recently, just an episode of chatting and answering questions and things like that. This particular episode, I'm going to be addressing some issues and questions and comments I've seen on a post a few days ago in a group I'm part of, and just thought I would cover some of them. You know, it's a good question that was asked, and it was, what are some of the problems you face as a knife maker? And I thought that was a good question, and I had a lot of pretty good answers there. I thought I'd kind of go over them and put my 2 cents in, whether right or wrong. So I've got a list here on my phone, and we're going to go over them. Now, this first one I see asked all the time. It's probably the most asked question, or the biggest comment. And I've covered this in previous Woodstove Chats and other videos. And it is the problem of selling your knives. And I'll always give the same answer. It really boils down to supply and demand. There's really no other way to put it. And now to get to that point, you have to market yourself. It's all marketing. In today's digital age, and I saw someone make a comment about this, you know, how to survive in the digital age. Well, you got to either get with the program or fall behind. That's all I know. And I'm older than a lot of makers, and I've been doing this for over 35 years. And it's been, you know, an adjustment for me, but I think that's for everybody. It's constantly changing. Now you have AI, and you've got to get with the program, like with this YouTube channel. AI is taking over, and you better embrace it and use it. But when it comes to marketing, the biggest thing you can do is show your work, get it out there. People, you know, it's word of mouth that gets it going. You know, if you got to do shows, whatever you got to do. But using social media and things like that, not only just showing your work, how you do it. And potential buyers like to see that. You know, how do you heat treat a knife? You know, you can make a pretty looking knife and it looks great, but will it hold an edge? How was it heat treated? I mean, I can take a lawnmower blade and dress it up, and that thing's trash. You know, so there's things like that you have to consider. You know, that's part of the reason why I do this channel. I like to show how I do things, what goes into it, so potential buyers, collectors can see that. And using social media, all of it that you can, regardless of what people may think about you. I mean, I'm on TikTok too, so do what you can to put your work out there. And it's word of mouth until you get a reputation. And like anything, that takes time. So I know I've covered this one to death before, so we'll move on. The next one I saw is someone has trouble grinding bevels. In knife making, that is, you know, one of the number one things. I'd say number 2 to heat treating. You need to know how to heat treat. We'll cover that at another time. I have before, but grinding bevels is something you have to learn. Practice. And use a jig, you know, on knives that you can use one on. There's nothing wrong with using a jig. I don't care what people say. I only freehand, you know, like that's some kind of, you know, badge or something. I don't use one, but I would if I need to, and I'm getting old, and I may need to start using one. And I'm getting hard to see, and it just comes with the territory of getting old, beside your back killing you and waking up with, not being able to crawl out of bed. But so yes, you really need to practice, and really learn how to. What I did is I've looked at knives. People tell me they have trouble grinding bevels, and they have trouble around their plunge lines. They've got belt bump. When you're grinding a knife, you got to avoid twisting it. And whether you're flat grinding or hollow grinding, if you cant that blade, you're going to get belt bump right where you canting it, and then you're going to have problems getting it out. You can get it out if it's not too thin. Plunge lines, use a file guide if you need to set your plunge lines. I use J-Flex belts to bump up against my plunge lines to clean them up. People use waterfall platens. Can't do that on hollow ground blades though, because a waterfall platen is flat. So you got to learn how to grind and set your plunge lines even and square without all of that. You can do what you can with a file guide though. It's one of the main things. The other thing that I see when it comes to grinding, learning how to grind and getting the proper edge geometry. You need to get your edge at a minimum of 20 thousandths. When I see a blade, it's got an edge, it's like 2 nickels wide or even a nickel wide, and it's not a chopper, it's just a skinner. I could see on a big chopper, but a skinning knife, a utility knife, the big old wide edges, what's gonna happen is over a couple years of sharpening, depending on how much you use it, that edge, it is such a steep angle, your secondary bevel, that it starts getting thicker as you remove metal when you're sharpening. It's going to be harder to hold edge. You're going to have to redo your secondary bevel. Learn how to grind down to at least 20 thousandths. On the chef's knife I'm working on, I'm actually grinding 2. I get those down to around 10 thousandths, 10 to 15, mostly around 10. These will probably be around 8 by the time I get through hand sanding. But they're chef's knives. I want them thin. It's like a fillet knife. If it's a chopper, a little different story, I'll 20 thousandths. When you go to do your JS test, if you're in the ABS, you chop 2x4s and cut ropes and all that, 20 thousandths at least is perfect. And you'll do just fine with that test. And that works in the field and everywhere else where you're using a knife like that, 20 thousandths minimum. And you won't have that big, giant, wide, it's a dead giveaway that, you need some more time grinding when you see that big, wide secondary bevel. Another one is finding time to build so many knives. I'm in the same boat. I've been blessed. I've got orders backed up. It's supply and demand. And I just can't keep up with it. I've raised prices, but I don't want to price out potential customers. And, I get a lot of people tell me, you're too cheap, but I don't see that. But, you may have to raise your prices a little bit if you got so many orders that you can't keep up. The type of knives I'm building are not just mostly are mosaic Damascus. They're not just knives with handles slapped on them. They have guards, bolsters, and all of that stuff, which really takes a lot of time. So that's my answer. I guess, you maybe raise your prices a little bit and see if that helps. I've done that, and I don't feel like I need to do it more right now. Okay, the next one on my list is sharpening. So a knife maker needs to know how to heat treat, how to grind bevels, how to sharpen, and, grind handles. A lot of different tasks, but sharpening, I don't send a knife out that's not sharp. If you need to buy a sharpening tool, that's what I would do. And I set the secondary bevel, the edge, on my grinder. I establish the wire. And so it's a burr. I establish that wire burr. Once I get there, I can usually knock it off with the grinder. I'll start with 220 and I'll go to 400 and knock it off. Then I take it to a butcher's ceramic. I sharpen on a butcher's ceramic by hand and hit it with a leather strop. That's just my way of doing it. Many ways of doing it, but if you need to get a sharpening, there's all kind of sharpeners out there, from cheap to outrageously expensive, and they'll set perfect secondary bevels for you. That's what I would do. Another thing I would think about is, how thick is your edge? If you're having problems establishing a good edge, how thick is your primary bevel edge? If it's 30 thousandths, that could be some of your problem. Now, you can still get it razor sharp. I mean, you look at bushcraft knives, and they got bevels this high, at this angle, and you get them razor sharp, and you can split firewood with them. But anyway, that's what I would look at doing, getting some kind of sharpening tool. There's a bunch of them out there, and that will really help you. There's some really good ones that'll help you. Nothing wrong with that at all. Another one is, the next one I got on my list is hilts and guards, and that can be tricky. I see there's a maker I've seen on YouTube, and making you drill the old way of drilling them out and taking the file and cutting them out. But if you would get yourself a file guide, and I've shown this many times on the channel, clamp that guard in there to where you can file against that file guide, carbide file guide, and prevent yourself from overcutting. You cut good square slot, and you sneak up on it until you get it. And I do a press fit where I get it down to about 1/1000 thousandths or so under, and then hammer it on. You can do a hot fit as well, and I do. It's not really a true hot fit. I heat it up to around 450 degrees and hammer it on. Leaves an impression in there where the shoulders indent the guard, and then I clean those up. I clean those impressions up. I use a mill now to do my slots, and then clean up with a file and file guide. That's what I recommend. If you can't, get a file guide, put it in a vise, and with hard jaws, and do it that way. And you can get good, clean slots. Just don't overcut it. Cut it under, hammer it on, check it out, see where you're hitting, mark the inside of it, see where your tang's hitting. That's what I do. And the other one I had was sales in the digital age. And again, it's just, you got to embrace it. And as hard as it is, a lot of older people tell me, I don't have an iPhone and this and that. And I'm talking about knife makers. And I don't know, they depend on shows and people, and one of these makers has been making knives forever, makes excellent knives, and can't move his knives. And so I don't depend on knife shows. I mean, if I did, I wouldn't make it. I mean, I'd have to travel 7 days a week and to do knife shows, and then have a pile of them when I get there. So I use social media, The last show we had, I sold one knife. The one before that, I'm talking about a local show, sold a couple knives, and I'm talking cheapo knives. I usually make some lower cost ones to go with some more expensive, and mosaic stuff. I couldn't make it on that either. So I recommend embracing it and get your work out there. Let people, see who you are. I mean, this guy's a great maker. I've known him for years. When I first started making, he was doing shows. I was doing shows with him, and he's still making. It's just sad. But we have to either embrace it or we fall behind. Another one is handle shaping. So the way I approach handle shaping is, you need to get yourself a height gauge. Get the cheap. I use just a cheapo height gauge. You don't have to have an elaborate, expensive one. And a machinist block or a piece of ceramic tile. I use a piece of ceramic tile and just set it on there and mark out your handles. You need some reference lines in there so you don't have lopsided handles. And then you can do your contouring and coat bottling or whatever you want to do. It could be straight broom handle style handles where you seesaw some sandpaper on them. That's fine, whatever. But have some reference lines so you got symmetry on your handle. And the best way to do it is just use a height gauge. Set your blade on a block on the ceramic tile or the machinist block. I use a 1, 2, 3 block to set my ricasso where I nose flat. Set my height gauge, put me a center line all the way around. You can also tell if your blade's straight, because you can look at the point and the tip and the end there and see, and move it up and down, set you some reference lines on your material. Now, if it's stag or something, natural material like that, you're dealing with whatever you got there. You need to grind both of them to the thickness you want, flat first, before you put them on the knife, and you're done. Just where you fit them up, whether it's a museum fit or a flush fit, where you grind them into your guard or bolster, or they're just slapped on a knife. Height gauge, digital or manual, it don't matter. And so the last one I got was, not knowing how to market themselves. And like I covered to begin with, marketing is something I have to do constantly and, sit up late at night doing. And it's not like in the old days. It's a different type of marketing now where it's all online. It's at your fingertips. It's much, much easier now. You can, do the work in your shop, show examples of how you do things, show your work, put it on, group pages that allow it, join groups that allow it, be a part of your local knife making community, share it there, use hashtags to, where your work is seen, all kind of ways to push it out there. Have yourself a website of your own Facebook knife page, that kind of stuff, TikTok, Instagram, which is not very friendly. I've been locked out of Instagram for probably 8 months now. I can't post a knife, nothing. I can post it, but nobody's gonna see it. They got me blocked. Apparently, the people that program this algorithm, bite their vegetables up and they don't tear their meat apart when they eat. I don't know, but knives to them, I hate to even get started, but you could take out all the words you want, call it a tool, you name it. It's a knife. Ooh, the oldest tool to mankind. I carry one every day. It's not a weapon, it's a tool. I use it for everything. I skinned 2 deer with it this last week. But I also cut rope, cut a box open, whatever. It's a tool, people. Man, I didn't mean to get off on that rant. But, those sites that are friendly, use them. That's what I do. And you just have to put the work into it, pictures, and it's very time consuming. Very time consuming. All right, so we got this knife hand sanded. I still have to put the logo on. And I'll go over it one more time before I, go to handles. These are going to be segmented bolstered handles. So it'll have a liner, a short bolster piece of material, and then the rest of the handle. It won't be segmented in the middle or nothing like that. But I could also put steel bolsters on here because of the hole pattern that I have, and I always prepare them that way. I've got another one just like it. This is 80 CRV2, and the other one is stainless. So it come out pretty good. Hope you can see that. You can see a little bit of the area there where, your plunges, but as I was grinding this knife, I was trying to stay away from this middle area. You get too high above there and you ruin it because your handle material has to come right in here, and you don't want a gap underneath that bolster area. So it come out pretty good. They are around 10 thousandths. The edges on both of these knives, one of them is around 8, but that's close enough. Good, should make a good chef's knife. But I hope you got something out of today's Woodstove Chat, and out of grinding a chef's knife. I got to go put the handles on this thing. If you got any questions, leave them down below. I want to thank my patrons, and I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing too, liking and commenting. See you on the next one.